House District or Senate District?
I'll do that. I'll take care of it.
Welcome to another candidate conversation from 25 Women for 2020.
Hello, and thank you for coming. We're talking about public education today. We have a special guest of Dr. Woody Myers and our panel of experts in the field from 25 Women for 2020. First, we have Deb Porter. Deb Porter is an HD4. And Deb, what subject do you teach?
Elementary music.
Thanks for coming today. Next, we have Laura Fred Smith. And Laura's in Senate District 18. What subject do you teach? What grade level?
I teach 8th grade science and high school earth science.
Thanks, Laura. Next up, we have Julie Dominguez. She's in Senate District 16. Welcome, Julie. What grade do you teach?
I teach middle school, ELL, English as a second language.
Thanks, Julie. Up next, we have Tiffany Grant. Tiffany is an HD 60. Tell us about your subject, Tiffany, or your grade level.
Yes, I teach high school math, specifically this year, Algebra 2 and Geometry.
Awesome. Next up is Julie Snyder from HD 33. Julie, tell us about your subject level or grade level that you're teaching.
I teach seniors, and I teach AP Government and Dual Credit Government.
Very good class to be teaching right now.
Yeah.
And up is Erica Lawrence. Erica Lawrence is from HD 72. Erica is a former teacher and now an administrator. Tell us about your job that you're doing today.
Yes, I am an elementary school principal, and I have been a school teacher, an assistant principal, and a school counselor.
And we are so grateful to have you here today and that you're running. Thanks, Erica. And up again is Bianca Tinklenberg. She's an HD 17. And tell us what you teach, Bianca.
Hi, I am a second grade teacher, so I teach all subjects.
Great. Thanks, Bianca. Up again is Alyssa Bailey. She's an HD 62. What do you teach, Alyssa?
Hi, thank you. I actually teach elementary special education.
Great. And finally, we have Cindy Worth. Cindy is in Senate District 44. Tell us about your teaching.
Hi, I'm a high school biology and environmental science teacher.
Great. Thanks to all this panel. And I'll give it back to Deb and Dr. Woody Myers.
Great. All right. So Dr. Myers, we're so grateful you could join us. And we want to talk about your excellent K12 education plan that you have developed and released just recently. And so I wonder if you could give us a little background on that plan and tell us, you know, what drives you to make this plan and what is the best thing about this plan.
Thank you very much for this opportunity today. I do appreciate it. And it's great meeting, even if it's in a little Zoom box, the talented folks that are on the screen, all of whom are giving up their time and energy to run for office and as well as to serve their students. I'm a third generation Hoosier and an IPS graduate. Indianapolis Public Schools were my schools before I went off to college and medical school. I finished up at Shortridge High School after having attended school 56, 74, and 80 here at IPS. And my mom was a school teacher and then a school vice principal and principal. And so I wonder if you could. I have a long history with public education here in Indiana. My plan that was developed in conjunction with a number of folks who care deeply about education talks about a new way to govern education in our state. We've got to have a superintendent of public instruction now being appointed by the governor who truly understands this opportunity to rethink old policies that just don't work. And so I'm planning to appoint the absolute best person in the nation that we can attract to that job. We're going to have a new state board of education to get things done. And so I'll be making many new appointments there, and they will include educators. Believe it or not, that's been an issue in the past. So governance of how we manage the budgets, how we manage the system is a big part of our plan. Resources are a part. We've got to have new dollars coming in. We've got to protect and make the old dollars that we've got more efficient than they've been. Clearly, the system needs to have an injection of funding, even in the challenging budget crisis that we're in, because teachers in our state just are not paid what they deserve to be paid, and can't manage their families, raise their families. And that's why so many are leaving and going to other states or leaving the profession. We got to have new accountability and stop all this arbitrary statewide testing that doesn't add to our knowledge and that we're not using in order to make good decisions. So we've got to rethink that whole approach. And in addition to that, we need equity. We need our kids to get the best education possible. So we've got to reevaluate how the funding is distributed. And that means that with the help of new legislators, hopefully all of the Zoom boxes that we see this afternoon, we need to, over time, recreate the school's funding formula for the state of Indiana that was utterly upended back in the Mitch Daniels administration, that needs to be corrected. So that's just a very high level overview of the things that we want to accomplish in our state, because K-12 education needs a lot of help, and we need to roll up our sleeves and take a much different approach.
Excellent. So all of our teacher candidates have been looking through your plan and have each taken out a piece of it that they think is most important. And so I want them to all comment on what they think is the best part of this plan. Not that they're all not good parts, but we're going to start with Deb Porter. So Deb, tell us what part of that K-12 plan you think is most important and why?
Well, the two parts that came out to me was the need for trauma-informed instruction and trauma-informed practices in our classroom, and then also the implicit bias training. Now, the reason those are both important to me is, first of all, right now in my district, almost every school district has gone back to face-to-face instruction, and everybody is very, very stressed. Part of the reason they're stressed is because this once very safe school classroom, a place where we all knew was very safe, nurturing environment, has now become a place of fear. Teachers are afraid, students are afraid, there's uncertainty at home with the children. Some of the students have parents that are unemployed and other stressors in their lives, and that carries over into their school. Now, a couple of years ago, under Dr. McCormick, we were supposed to start implementing social emotional learning, and many of the school districts did that, but they didn't do it very widely spread. And I think that it's too bad, because the districts that did do it more widely spread are a little better prepared. But so beefing up our social emotional learning is really key to having trauma-informed practices. And we really need to beef that up. And I'm glad to see that we're going to have the extra money for that professional development so that everybody can be on board. And by the way, the students aren't the only one who are trauma-informed right now. Our own coworkers are trauma-informed because they're coming into a place of fear as well. So it goes both ways there. So this is so important. And the other one is this implicit bias training. We also, as we're looking around our world, and some of our neighborhoods are seeing the demonstrations about racial injustice and the racial unrest that is so prevalent right now. Rightfully so, I might add. And yet there are many pockets in our state where people just don't understand that. And they have a sense of, well, I'm not part of the problem, I'm colorblind. And by those very words, they're demonstrating that they have a place of implicit bias. So in order for us to be able to begin to address systemic racism and institutional bias and institutionalized racism, we have to first of all explore the implicit bias that we all carry with us simply because of our cultural position. And this implicit bias training would go a long way towards addressing that. So I'm really glad to see both of those parts as built right into your program. So thank you for that.
All right, and Deb Porter's running for House District 4. And yes. So, all right, so next is Laura Fred Smith. And so Laura, tell us what you think is very important about this plan and why.
So I'm going to build on what Deb Porter said. I looked at this plan and I liked the equity that is talked about in this plan, Because when we talk about equity, we're not only talking about equity in available materials to the classroom, although that is a big portion of it. We need to make sure that funding is available to our rural communities, just like it is to our big city schools. In some big city schools, you have students in poorer school districts and you have students in rich school districts. And because of the tax base and the way that funding formula is done in the state of Indiana, where we've taken away and we've capped property taxes, some of that is adjusted the tax formula so that our rural schools don't get the same kind of funding that some of our wealthier schools and wealthier populations have. So equity in funding is one of those things. But then we also need to look at the equity of resources and those things that Deb talked about with trauma-informed teaching, and look at the resources that are available to all of our students. And so when I think about equity, I think about the different types of students that we have in our schools. I teach in Logansport Community Schools, which has one of the highest numbers of diverse population in our state. In Logansport High School, we have 30 different flags representing the different student cultures that come to our school. And with the plan that has equity listed in that plan, I'm looking at that is that those students that come from all of those different backgrounds and all of those different cultures, they're going to get the kind of resources that they need. They're going to have equity in what we give them. So that means, to me, they're going to be able to know that we're going to get them the language supports that they need. Not only just funding the building and funding the schools in an equitable way so that each building has good staff and good teacher resources, but they're going to have the language support systems that they need. And they're going to have teachers' aides that help in the classrooms. And they're going to have the access to materials to help those students meet the needs that they do. We have students that come from all different classes of socio and economic backgrounds, all different cultures, all different emotional backgrounds, all different language backgrounds, and equity in education covers all of those things. And so when I looked at this plan, I looked at equity in our funding, equity in the backgrounds, equity in resources, and I'm looking forward to working with a system of government with leaders that recognize that equity in education means all of those different things. And that when we talk about equity, we're not just talking about you have a building, you have resources. We're talking about all of the different needs that a student needs in order to be successful. And I can't wait to work with people that mean those same things and believe those same things.
Excellent. Thank you, Laura. So, okay, and next we have Julie Dominguez.
Hi.
Julie's running for Senate District 16. Sorry, go ahead, Julie.
No, you're fine. I just wanted to thank Dr. Woody Myers for stepping up to be a leader in the state. It is so needed. And I wanted to thank you for the efforts that you've made in putting out this plan for education.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What came to my attention was the science portion of the plan. For the life of me, I don't understand why research and studies are a partisan issue. I don't know why people are arguing about this day in and day out. I'm frustrated because science says that children are carriers of this pathogen, COVID-19. And even though I give kudos to the administrators and the superintendent and the teachers and all of the support staff for coming together and coming up with a return to learn plan, it still is putting people at risk. There's absolutely no way that we can social distance 6 feet apart in a classroom. It's not being done. 3 feet between students, yes. Between the teacher and the student, no way. We have to get next to the students. We have to help them. We have to work with them. And I'm very upset that teachers were deemed essential workers, but we were thrown back into the school setting without all of the proper protocol in order to protect ourselves and our families. And I don't think that they would have done that with any other professional group. And the fact that Senator Bray started a fuss about how virtual schools get less funding than face-to-face schools was very upsetting to me as well, because public schools did not ask for this pandemic to happen. They did not ask for this. But I think that the schools that opened up virtually made a very wise decision because they wanted to protect all of their staff and children and their families. So I really appreciate the science portion of it. And if elected, I will make sure that science and research and studies is a part of all that I do. Because if something hasn't been researched or backed by science or studied, then there's no reason to implement it. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, Tiffany Grant, running for House District 60. Go ahead, Tiffany. Tell us what you found interesting in this plan and what you think about it.
Yes, I appreciate that. I appreciate this opportunity, right, to discuss Dr. Myers' plan that he has released for education reform in Indiana. In particular, I wanted to talk about the distribution of funds. So in the coming fiscal year, we are planning to spend about $500 million on non-public education funding. So between charter schools and choice vouchers, we're spending a tremendous amount of money. I know that doesn't maybe feel like a lot with the overall budget being $9 billion. But when you look at the increases we've recently seen, the charter system and the voucher system have increased by 9 or 10% from one year to the next most recently, and public education funding only increased by 2%. So you're seeing a greater rate of change, that's a good math term, a greater rate of change in those funding pieces, right? So we're clearly prioritizing right now in Indiana, providing more of that non-public education piece in the overall funding budget for education. Because we're doing that, we are pulling money out of the public education system and those pieces that are those schools and districts that are in greater need, right? As teachers, we know we just become acutely aware of the issues and the struggles of our students and their families and the communities at large, right? And so when we know those things and we know that schools could provide more, we get frustrated, right? I am frustrated that we are not receiving the funding that we need because of the way we have prioritized funding in Indiana for public education. I've spent the past 6 years working in District 60 as a teacher. This is my 7th year here in teaching in this district. I've spent a few years teaching high school math. I've also taught remedial reading at the middle school level. So I know that the earlier you can help students, the better gains you can make. There are 3 aspects that I really thought were fantastic about Dr. Myers' plan. One of them is to pause funding or pause the spread of charter schools, right? We're going to pause approving charter schools in the state of Indiana. We're going to pause the expense of vouchers, the voucher system. And then he also would like to require kindergarten and provide universal pre-K. Those are critical to the success, right? So other candidates have talked about like the achievement gap or providing really those resources for students who are in need. And the earlier we can help provide that public education and the resources that schools have, the better those students will be academically, the better those students will be socially and emotionally. That's the kind of thing we can do if we better prioritize our funding. This priority for public funding just provides more resources. When you use those other programs, they're more difficult to get into. When you prioritize public education, public schools, more students receive more resources. You provide for a stronger community. And so that's what I particularly liked about Dr. Myers' plan, is that he is prioritizing truly public education monies that will help the neediest of our students in my district and across the state of Indiana.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay, next we're going to go to Julie Snyder. And Julie, there you go. So tell us what you saw, what stood out in this plan for you and why that's important.
First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Myers for being here and for speaking with us. As an educator, it's fairly wonderful to talk to someone running for a major political office that truly cares about teachers and students. As most of us can all attest, sometimes we feel really frustrated that we're not being heard. So just that in itself is wonderful. So thank you. The piece of your plan that I was drawn to immediately was your idea to expand broadband, high-speed broadband internet, especially to the rural areas. My district, District 33, is pretty rural. It's all of Randolph County and all of Jay County. And in my district, access to high-speed broadband has become one of the major issues facing the district, facing the communities there. And, you know, coming out at the issue as an educator, it makes it even more of a fundamental need for me because, you know, technology in the classroom has just blown up. I mean, we have it. I'm completely internet based in my room. I have no paper and pencil anymore. I teach government to seniors, and everything is on our learning management system. And so I understand that that need is becoming more and more important to education. One of the aspects I think people don't look at very often is that technology in the classroom forces our students to become active learners instead of passive learners. And the fact is that our rural students are being left behind in that, because if they don't have access, then it becomes an issue of equality. It becomes an issue of social justice, right? That these kids do not have the same opportunities to learn as other students. And the fact is that student achievement can now be tied to their access to the internet. So, I mean, we have to face those facts that our kids they don't have equal access. And aside from that, I think that, you know, the impact on the economy, I think a lot of people don't understand that businesses are not going to be attracted to communities that don't have access to high-speed broadband. Healthcare, think of how that can be impacted. Your hospitals that don't have access to, you know, high-speed internet, they may not be able to have the specialized testing or specialized things, imaging, things like that. 96% of Hoosiers living in urban areas have access to high speed, and compare that to only 67% that live in rural areas. So I definitely support everything you want to do. And, you know, if I get elected, that will be something that is a priority for me. Trying to bring it to our community by any means, and the different plans could be maybe let's set broadband internet up as a utility. Why don't we see it more as a necessity? Because to me, it's like electricity, it's like natural gas. So that would kind of be my plan, to treat it as a utility and use regulations and other things to try to get it expanded to the areas that don't have it. Also seeking out like loans and grants. I read an article yesterday about the USDA offering grants to communities to do this. In fact, I think a community in my district just won a grant to expand broadband. So ultimately, I think it just comes down to making broadband, high-speed broadband, a priority. And I love that you're doing it, and I think that that's something that I would want to do too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Julie. Okay, next we're going to hear from Erica Lawrence from New Albany. So you know the question, Erica.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Meyer, for being here. It is very refreshing to read your plan and the time that has taken for you to cultivate this expertise in education and what our schools need to be successful. So I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled. One aspect of the plan that I really am attracted to is the increase in funding for nurses, social workers, and counselors. And that's critically important right now. Like, we need this right now, because our families are facing a global pandemic and, in addition to that, economic crisis. And so these people, these people who serve in these roles, they are on the front lines along with our teachers. They are locked arm in arm with our teachers, serving families as our schools are open. And we have children who are facing emotional stress, emotional need, and mental health care concerns. They're having issues with access to resources as families are not making the same income or their job status has changed. So absolutely, social workers help us to navigate that path of connecting families with social networks and social supports. And then, of course, health issues. We are facing a global pandemic. We absolutely need medically trained people, boots on the ground in our buildings, connecting with our children, connecting with families. So absolutely, we need this leadership right now in Indiana to help us as we are facing these immediate needs and these frontline responders that help us. I am absolutely blessed in my school as I serve as a school principal. This is not crazy to think that we should have these service people, these personnel within our buildings. I have a school with a therapist, a mental health counselor, a counselor, social worker. All these people work in our school to serve our families. And it is absolutely important. It is a part of that safety net of network, that safety net of resources that we can provide our families. It's a one-stop shop. Families know that they can come to our school. We have a food bank in our building because our families need it. And so when we think about the microcosm of schools that yes, we serve children, and we absolutely, our outcome is absolutely about academic success, but academic success is absolutely hastened when our children are facing non-academic barriers. So bringing these people into our schools make a profound difference in the educational outcomes for our children and our families. So I'm thrilled about this opportunity to have a leader in our state. And as I become elected to go to Indianapolis to represent District 72, I'm thrilled about opportunities that we're going to bring to our children, our youngest Hoosiers, and for all of our families. Even when we think about our grandparents who care for their school-age grandchildren, this is profound. This is what our families need to be able to raise young people into strong adults. So thank you very much, Dr. Meyer, for your plan.
Thank you.
Oops. Oh no, I muted. Oh, sorry. Well, thank you, Erica. Okay, so next we're going to go to Bianca Tinklenberg, and you are unmuted. So Bianca, you know
Thank you.
what we're talking about. Go right ahead.
So thank you, Dr. Myers, for your innovative plan. I am a second grade teacher, so part of your plan that addresses the social and emotional and academic learning really relates to me because as Erica has mentioned with the school counselors and things and those resources, that relates in the second grade level. So I am faced with a lot of challenges related to how I'm changing my instruction, how my classroom is set up, how my procedures are set up. I am going to have students face-to-face Monday, and I'm still processing some of those procedures because it is crazy to think of every day I'm going to have a seating chart in my classroom. I have to have seating charts in the cafeteria. We have to have seating charts in specials. So our kids are not used to that. So my worry is all of these things, they're not getting much choice in this because we have to create all of these things to be able to contact trace to make sure we know if any of our children are exposed. So I have a lack of resources for all of my hands-on learning. We share our materials, we share our supplies. So the students that don't have those resources, the students that we usually, it's okay that you didn't have all your supplies to come to school, we're gonna share as a classroom community, having to rethink all of that, making sure that I have those supplies for those students that don't come with it, because it's not fair for those students that don't have the resources. Like we have mentioned, we have families that are facing from this pandemic, their income has been lessened, or maybe they don't even have an income right now. So that affects their social and emotional. They're worried to go to school because, well, sometimes I wear the same clothes. Is someone going to judge me because, you're supposed to wash your clothes properly and all of these things that relate to their social emotional learning. And students can't learn. I think Erica said this too. Students can't learn if they don't feel safe, right? So all of these things that we are setting up, these rules, these procedures, my fear is that my students will feel like, it's just there's no choice. So I'm trying to think of, as an educator, how I can do that with limited resources. I think that with this funding, we need to be sure, and I know Dr. Myers, you have this in your plan, through additional tutoring supports and additional school resources. And this is so needed. And I wish we could have this before this school year, because it would make our lives a little bit easier as educators. I will be wearing the hat of virtual teacher and in-person teacher. So just alone on myself, no extra funding for our educators in my district for that. We will all be having those two roles. It's not, we don't have designated virtual teachers. So figuring out those two hats, moving into Monday, talking with families, what did you expect when you signed up for virtual learning? Do you have resources for your child at home? This connects back to the internet. Some of the sites that we've been using for our videos and things, some of the kids can't load them. So then they're missing out on academics because of the internet. They don't have the resources, but their parents are nervous to send them to school. So we have to work together. And I know that Dr. Myers will, because he wants to work on additional tutoring supports and school resources, including the pre-K funding and kindergarten, to get those students started out right. So when I'm in the State House, I want to make sure that schools are fully funded, so we don't have teachers that are overworked, working 2 jobs pretty much, and only receiving salary for 1. So I want to make sure we have school funding, and I want to make sure we have the resources. This school year will be the first year that I have a social worker full-time in my building. This is my 6th year of teaching. So my first 5 years, and before that, even in my district, we didn't have full-time. So we had our social worker 2.5 days a week. This is critical coming back off of students being out of the classroom for multiple months. So I am fortunate to be able to have that this year, but not all schools are. So this is a huge need. We need funding for that, and we need those additional tutoring. We know students have missed learning, so having that additional funding for tutoring and school counselors and just the support, so that we can get our students on the right foot in elementary, so when they get to the middle school, high school level, they are able to learn.
Thank you.
That's great, Bianca, thanks. Okay, and next we're gonna go to Alyssa Bailey from House District 62. Go ahead, Alyssa.
So first I want to say thank you, Dr. Myers, for joining us, and thank you for designing a strong plan to revamp K-12 education. While each aspect of your plan is important, I want to focus on accountability. So the state holds teachers and schools accountable with standardized testing. You may remember iStep or iLearn. These tests do not differentiate for our students based on their abilities or their learning styles, and they measure students by their scores and how well they compare to other students across the state. As a public school teacher, I can tell you from experience that these tests do not help teachers measure growth, find student strengths and weaknesses, or even establish missing skills. The state spends millions of dollars on these tests, and the data is not provided in a timely manner. And after the test is complete, we don't even see the results until after the students have completed that school year, gone to summer break, and then have returned into a new classroom or grade level. Even if we got the results back sooner, the tests do not show us how best to support our students. Instead, these tests show the inadequacies of resources and supports for students based on the area they live and the schools they attend. Check out where the lowest and highest performing schools are located in Indiana and search the demographics, and the trends will become clear. I'm tired of our students, our staff, and our schools being cast aside by legislators that have never worked in, and in some cases, never attended a public school. When I become state representative, I'm going to help revamp the poor accountability that is occurring across our state's educational program. And I'm going to offer solutions that will provide our teachers with usable data that allows families to celebrate our students' growth, provide framework for encouraging our students' strengths while improving their weaknesses, and allow the millions of dollars wasted to be put into necessary supports. Our students, families, schools, and communities deserve better, and I will continue to advocate for that in Indianapolis and beyond. So thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alyssa. Okay, and so now we're going to move to our last teacher candidate today, and that is Cindy Worth, coming from Columbus, Indiana.
Hi.
Hi, Cindy.
Thank you for putting out such a comprehensive plan that puts students first and teachers first. It's incredibly important to have someone that feels like teachers are important. So protecting the education budget from future cuts is incredibly important, as we've seen over the last decade. And then improving compensation to attract and retain teachers in Indiana is another one of the pieces of it that really I really resonate with. The number of education majors in Indiana colleges has declined nearly 40% in the last decade. If you talk to any principal or superintendent, if they're hiring for new teachers, they'll tell you that they have a really difficult time competing with out-of-state schools for our new teachers coming out of Indiana schools. Teacher pay is an enormous part of the reason, but as Alyssa was starting to talk about, teachers sometimes need a second or third job to survive. It shows a distinct lack of value in our profession, but it's not the entire reason Indiana has a difficult time attracting and retaining teachers. We have a culture of deep professionalization of teaching, micromanaging teachers, and using rating systems to disempower and divide teachers. We sort of promote condensation inside and outside of the classroom as a culture based on qualifications, that being a professional is somehow better than being a teacher. And we're talking about our future leaders, our future citizens. So teacher is an incredibly important job. And my background, I'm a scientist, so I came into teaching late, and it's really, really hit me in the heart of how incredibly important teachers are. Students and student learning are at the center of every teacher's day and every teacher's life. But our current legislation in Indiana indicates that this isn't fully realized by legislators who are making the laws and rules for teachers. A case in point, I'm currently out of the classroom this year, but when I was in my yard this morning playing ball with my dog, a former teacher or a former student stopped by to see me, her teacher, to have a chat. And these kids never leave your heart, and they never leave the teacher's mind. So recognizing that that's part of the professionalism of this is incredibly important. So we micromanage teachers in many ways, which disempowers teachers. Teachers are artists, and disempowering them doesn't allow them to be the artists they are. I'm a scientist, so I like to have numbers and quantify things. But as a teacher and a parent, I know you cannot quantify a child. It depersonalizes them and it dehumanizes them. And if we can allow that back into a teacher's day and a teacher's world, our public education system in Indiana can radically change for the better. We've talked about high stakes testing, driving teaching, and the decoupling of teacher salaries from test scores is a start. But another factor that we forget about when we're trying to retain good teachers and even attract them to Indiana is the letter grades applied to schools based on these test scores are still in place. If you have a young person interviewing for a job, for a teaching job, they're going to look at these. And those are incredibly demoralizing for anyone trying to enter the profession. If those are the only schools they have, so to speak, to choose from, they may rethink that career path when that's combined with the salary. And then one last thing that I want to talk about is we have a needless system of rating teachers as highly effective, and needs improvement. And what this does is divides teachers, discourages collaboration, and promotes competition among teachers. This doesn't serve students in any way. Collaboration and mentoring are the very ways teachers learn and grow. Loss of incentives for this to occur organically completely disempowers teachers. When you put in rules for formalized mentorship and formalized mentoring programs, it doesn't encourage collaboration. Teachers are by very nature collaborative. This is how they work. This is how they think. This is how they thrive. When we put this back in the hands of teachers and administrators to assist teachers with, we can serve students so much better. So salaries are incredibly important in the reprofessionalization of teachers, but we have some other things that we're still not quite getting right. And I thank you, Dr. Myers, for your plan that is protecting students, educators, and compensation and budgets overall.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Great. All right. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. So I want to go back to Dr. Myers for some kind of wrap up. I mean, what do you think?
Wow.
There's a lot of interesting, interesting views on the plan. And so I hope you feel kind of empowered by all of these teachers. bringing some real personal connection to this plan.
I
And,
do.
and tell us how you're going to get this plan in place.
Well, thank you very much for that opportunity. And yes, I do feel empowered. I took some notes while you guys were speaking. A lot of points were emphasized that made a big difference with me. And I'm glad that you took such notice of the detail. Let me just make a couple of comments overall. I hear a lot of themes. Let us do our job is one of the themes. I hear, and don't encumber us from using what we have learned in order to address the needs of our students was another theme. Make sure that we take into account the health of the student and the health of the community. I heard that one loudly and clearly as well. And then there was a sort of an overarching concern regarding the current COVID-19 situation. In addition to our plan for K-12 education, our grade F plan that you see on the website, I have published an essay piece where I talk about a way to think about returning to school safely. I'm very disappointed in the CDC. This is the first time in my life I've ever said that. It's recently that they just haven't given us the guidelines that we need. The state certainly hasn't offered the leadership that it needs to do. With the coronavirus cases going up, not down, are staying at a very high level for a sustained period of time, and the positivity rate staying high, it's just too dangerous in many parts of our state to do in school 5 day a week, especially. So I've been an advocate for pushing the pause button, so to speak, on returning to in-class learning for the time being. Let's see how this thing evens out over the next several months, because I don't see it going in a good direction. And yes, our kids do get it. They do spread it. They may not be hospitalized as much as we adults are. Those of us, especially over a certain age, I know I am in that category, but nonetheless, many teachers have pre-existing conditions that we should worry about, and so all of that tells me let's err on the side of safety. Of course, you can't do virtual teaching without the hardware, the software, the training, and the internet. And I know the point was made that we've got to get broadband throughout the state of Indiana, and it's got to work. And yes, it is a utility, just like water, just like electricity, and we've got to start treating it as such. And that's something our administration will absolutely move forward with as well. So I heard a lot of good things. One last point I'll make, and I hope we have a little bit of time for more discussion. I know the importance of science. I am a physician. I trained using science and math, and I'm a STEM kind of guy. But you know what? I also am a lover of art and music, and I just know that not everybody comes to school with a desire to or talent for a STEM education. We have some brilliant artists and musicians in our schools, and they need to be nurtured as well, because for them that's where they're going to find their livelihoods. That's where they're going to find the joy in their lives. And I just I don't think we're doing enough. I need more detail, but I don't think we're doing enough to support the art teachers and the music teachers and the other fine art teachers that we have in our state. And I want to do more for them as well, because I just know that for so many of our children, that's just such an important part of their learning. And I'm one of the guys. Both of my kids were involved in musical theater, and I like going to the plays. I like seeing what the kids were able to do, the creativity of putting together a play. I enjoyed it, and I want other parents to have that experience as well. And it's good for the kids. So all of that's to say, I appreciate the comments that you offered. It's energizing me. I know that it's going to be a very important decision as to who we get to lead our schools and the people that we ask to serve on the board. But I bet you we can find together some good folks to do that. And if all of you guys promise me you'll get elected, I just know that we're going to have a cadre of experienced, talented legislators who are going to get this stuff changed and done. And I'm looking forward to working with you. So thank you very, very much.
All right, that's excellent. All right, well, there we all are. And I'm so full of hope. I think all of us are. I mean, it's so exciting to think about what we could be in Indiana, you know, how education could be so much better and really attract both business and teachers and students to this state. So, all right, well, we're going to wrap it up. I have to give my get out the vote thing. So I want everybody to remember that they must go to www.indianavoters.com before October 5th to get registered to vote. And you can also go to that same website, indianavoters.com, and you can request an absentee ballot up until October 22nd if you qualify. And you can also find out where to go to vote. If you're going to vote early in person or on election day in person, you can find that also at indianavoters.com. And you can find out who's on your ballot. So, so please go there, make sure you're registered. I'd like to challenge everybody to make sure that 20 of your friends are registered and get to the polls and vote, or vote in some way. So, okay, there's my big get out the vote thing. Please do it. All right, and so Shannon's gonna wrap it up for us.
Well done, Deb. It seems absolutely necessary after talking to all these amazing educators that we should give you some homework. So to the viewers out there, Deb gave you your first assignment, and that is to get registered, check your registration, double check your registration, and then make a plan with your family and friends on how you will vote. And second thing is to go to 25womenfor2020.org. You can find out more information on this panel of candidates along with our 25 Women for 2020. With a few clicks, you can find out more about their campaign, find out ways to get involved, and email them. Last assignment is to go to drwoodymyers.com and check out his plan there, along with many other plans and his experience and ideas of how to transform Indiana. And I personally suggest you check out the t-shirts. I have one on order and I cannot wait to get one.
I love those.
Awesome t-shirts. So thank you so much to this panel. We appreciate our special guest, Dr. Woody Myers, and we look forward to talking to you again. We look forward to seeing you as our next governor.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Excellent. All
Thank
right,
you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, all you awesome candidates. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Be well.
Bye.